Hi, you're tuning to the Raging Item channel, and I'm your host, Genghis, and I'm here with our second draft recap of PSL Season 5. This time around, we're going to look at the Winter Conference. We're going to look at 11 teams, because the last team, the 12th team, is my team, and I will do that in a separate video where I will go through my own team and more in-depth discussion about it. So we're going to look through 11 teams today, and we're going to go through them just as we did yesterday, from the first pick to the 11th pick in this case. And we're going to give each and every team a grade between F and A, with a number of different steps in between, like, for example, the C- and C+, as you all know from yesterday. But with that, we're going to go right into this, and first out we have the Chicago Cubans and Thorsak. This is a very interesting team. I really like it, and I know for a fact that it has some problems as well. But overall, this is a very good team. We have Latios, Raikou Rebellion, Alomomola, Alcremie, Spiritomb, Lopunny, Rillaboom, Nidoqueen, Emboar, Sigilyph, and Scyther. Overall, this is a very nice team, as I said earlier. My biggest concern for this team is the Volt Beam weakness, because Latios doesn't really want to take nice move. Alomomola can't really switch in on electric moves. Rillaboom will set up the aggressive terrain as well, which means that Alomomola will be even worse in that regard. And Rillaboom can really take an Ice move, Nidoqueen can take an Ice move, Sigilyph can take either an Ice move or a Thunder Beam, and same go for Scyther, and that's a big problem for this team. At the same time, the aggressive terrain from Rillaboom is actually pretty decent for the team, because it just do make Raikou, Rebellion, and Emboar better defensively and offensively, because they can check more things and come in on different things. Even if they still won't appreciate an EQ, they can still take it. Even if high horsepower is a way more common move this time around than it was last generation. My biggest concern here is that the Ghost type in Spiritomb and the secondary Psychic type in Sigilyph aren't that good in my opinion. I would have liked to see another picks there, but at the same time, Spiritomb is one that you don't really know what it will do. It has a very powerful Sucker Punch. And Sigilyph is a very good phaser as well, together with immunity to Stealth Rocks and Toxic and so forth, thanks to Magic Bounce, I think it's called. And that's actually very useful for a team like this, because you don't really want Stealth Rocks or T-Spikes or ability or status moves thrown towards your team. So the synergy is kinda nice. Having Alcremie in this team might actually work out, because the Fairy Dragon Steel Core becomes really decent then. Having dual fighting types in Cobalion and Emboar is not something I would have gone for, but they do different jobs in Cobalion, can be more specially offensive as well, and has a decent opportunity to wall switch out as well on most things. Emboar has the same probability there with U-turn, I think. I'm pretty sure it gets U-turn at least. And you have some other ones that can work around that, so you have a lot of switches that is possible. Defaulting options, outside of Latios, Sigilyph and Scyther, I don't really see anything else. Sigilyph might be your best defogger here, because Latios wants to be offensive and Scyther wants to be offensive, even if he might never bring Scyther. But this is a very interesting team, and overall I really like it, but I have to give it a C because I don't feel like it works together that well. Mostly since you don't really have a really good switch into Volt Beam at all, which is a very common move. And then you also have the problem with high horsepower, which is now more prominent than EQ for some ones as well. So aggressive terrain might not be as good for this team as a supportive ability. Next up, we have the Chicago Fire types and Coach CJ, which is a new coach, and he has Celesteela, Arcanine, Vaporeon, Runerigus, Druddigon, Zebstrika, Persian, Taplele, Chansey, Amoonguss, Farfetch'd, Galarian Farfetch'd, and Wormadam. I'm a bit torn on this team, because having Celesteela and Taplele is really good. The defensive pairing between Arcanine, Vaporeon, and Amoonguss is really, really good. But the problem is that your third or fourth best attacking Pokemon is Druddigon. That's a bit of a problem. That's a big problem in my opinion, and you don't really have a good way to work around it either, because this means that Celesteela must be offensive. Arcanine can't really rely on being defensive that often, because you need it to be offensive. Taplele can't run those more bulkier sets either, because you want it to be offensive so you can deal with things. And then you are in a very strange spot with this team because you can't really do the defensive work that you need and you can't do the offensive work that you need. So you're in between both types of builds. Partial is maybe one of the better tier 6, and Substrike is a decent option in tier 5, but I think you could have done better. Also being forced to have Farfetch'd and Wormadam as Leicester picks might be a bit of a problem, even if they do apply with different types of strategies. Rocks can be a bit of a problem for this team since, as far as I noticed, I only see Farfetch'd with the defog, maybe Taplele gets defog, I'm not too sure about that. So you have a bit of a problem there, you don't have any spinners. Chance is a very easy one to set up on, unless you know exactly what you're doing with it. And Amoonguss can be pretty passive as well, same goes for Vaporeon. Even if they do have good chances to use Toxic on everything, you still might run the risk of being set up on a lot of the time. And if you get set up on, you don't really have a lot of options to deal with those defensively, especially not if they are physically offensive mons that sets up on you. So this is probably the team that I have to rank the lowest out of all teams with a D-, because I don't really see a synergy. I don't see it working out. It's a okay looking team if you look into every single Pokemon, but as a whole team, it doesn't really tell it for me. Next up, we have the Washington, Sceptiles, and Trevor. I'm pretty sure that I spelled Washington wrong as well, so that's a pretty decent start to this. He has the Dracovish, Hatterene, Alolan Muck, Registeel, Venusaur, Palossand, Luxray, Victini, Galvantula, Lucario, Slacking, and Golem. This can be a very scary team, because it has a pretty decent option in Trick Room, and it also has the webs, which means that it can run a number of different sets, and you can actually switch it up a lot, and that saves this team, because it's not that good if you just look at it. You have Dracovish and you have Victini as really good wall breakers, and you have Hatterene as a good wall breaker if you're on the Trick Room. Then have Galvantula to support Dracovish and Victini. Lucario can do whatever it wants to really on this team. Alolan Muck wants to be on the Trick Room. Luxray is a really good Pokemon to have on the Trick Room. And you have a number of other different combinations you can do here. My biggest concern for this team though is Venusaur, because I don't feel like it's a very good defensive grass type without this Mega Evolution, especially not since you already have Alolan Muck and you don't have a very good switching into EQ, so you would rather have wanted that to be a pure grass type, maybe something like Tangela instead of Venusaur. So this is a very nice built team, and it has a number of ways to work around different opponents. So I'm really looking forward to see this team make it base, and it's actually one of those teams that I feel can surprise everyone, especially if Trevor plays well. It might even challenge for a top 4 spot in the league if everything goes his way. But this is a very nice team, and I'm a big fan of it. I really hope you can do well with Trevor. Next up, we have the Hentynamo, and the team is coached by Hacker. He has the Tornadus, Therian, Kyurem, Pelipper, Kingdra, Ludicolo, Raichu, Audino, Crocodile, Metagross, Scoffagrigus, Toxicroak, and Pagadic. This is a team I can see it working, because it's a semi-rain team. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of it, because outside of rain it's not that good. Inside of rain it has mons that doesn't really want to be there. The first 5 or 6 months from Tornadus to Raichu really wants to be in the rain. Then you only have Toxicroak that really wants to be inside rain. Metagross, Crocodile, Scoffagrigus, and Togetic doesn't really get any benefits from it. It's rather contrary to that, because it can't really take boosted water types move very, very well. When it comes to Togetic, it can't really take a Thunder. Toxicroak has Dry Skin, so it should be able to work around that well in that regard, and it also has the other move as well, which I forgot what it's called now. Well, the other ability as well, which I forgot what it is. Kingdra in rain is always scary. Tornadus in rain is always scary. Ludicolo and Raichu can be very dangerous in rain. So I mean, you have the things to make it work, but at the same time you have things that might hinder you to make it work really well. On this team, I feel like Audino might be necessary, because it is a wish pass if you don't have one before, and Kofagrigus kind of needs a Wish Posit to be really useful, and Togetic might not be the best wisher. So yeah, I can see it working that way. Crocodile and Metagross are decent rock setters. You have T-Spikes in Kofagrigus. Don't know if Toxicroak gets it. You also have defoggers on Torn, Kyurem. I'm pretty sure Kyurem gets defog at least, but you have Torn, Pelipper as the designated defoggers, and you also have Togetic, which can defog away pretty easily. I kind of wanted to see a spinner on this team or a web setter, so just to make sure that you can outspeed things with things like Kingdra and Ludicolo and Kyurem outside of rain as well, which might be able to find a way to work around that, because this is kind of versatile team if you can make it work, and I'm not sure that Hacker can make it work, and therefore I ranked it as a C team. But it's an interesting team, and I don't know where to say if it will go to playoffs or if it won't go to playoffs. It's very hard to do, because Hacker has a tendency to surprise everyone, even if he drafts a team that on the first glance might not work. But as I said, the rain part of the team looks really good. The other part of the team looks not as good, since you have a rain team as well. So yeah, that's my take on it. Then we have the Holland Heracross and Alice, who has Clefable, Ferrothorn, Incineroar, Greninja, Rotom, Ditto, Machoke, Toxapex, Hippowdon, Mandibuzz, Noivern, Carkol, and just reading this out makes me throw up in my mouth. This is bulk. This is pro bulk. This is a classic Alice team. I have no clue how many times they've drafted Clefable in this league, Ferrothorn as well, Toxapex as well. But this is bulk. This is more of a stall team than science team, in my opinion, but at the same time it does have very decent breakers in Incineroar, in Greninja, in Noivern, and Carkol is a very good spinner. Ditto can be exactly whatever you want it to be, and Rotom is just a nice phaser to have, or to get in the months that you want. Hippowdon is one of those months that might not work on every single team, since it has Sandstream, but in this type of team I do think it can work, because you get that sandstorm damage on every team when they are switching around and so forth, and you also get the stealth rocks and the spikes and T-spikes from Toxapex. You don't really have a spinner outside of Carkol, so that might be something that you want to look into. The defogs options is really scarce as well, with only Mandibuzz and Rotom being decent defoggers. Noivern doesn't really want to run defog all that often. Machoke, I think, is a very good Pokemon to get in Tier 6, because it is very bulky with the Eviolite and it can hit pretty hard as well. So yeah, also having the options to taunt with several things on your team actually stops the opposing team from being able to defog away rocks and spikes and so forth, which is a very decent option to have on a stall team, because then you actually make sure that your very crucial parts of hazard stays up every single time. And this for me is a B-, maybe even a B+ team. It actually depends on how Alice plays with it, because she tends to play very well with stall teams, or stall-like teams, but at the same time this is a team that might not work in the current meta, because we don't have Mega Evolutions, we don't have C-moves, and it might be hard for her to break down other bulkier teams because of that. But this is a very solid team, and I'm actually ranking it higher than I've done any other of her teams, because I do think this has more potential than those teams ever had. Next up we have the Florida Flygons and Blank 101, who drafted Cinderace, Conkeldurr, Silvally, Alola Ninetales, Appleton, Beartic, Pidgeot, Papafini, Gastrodon, Shaymin, Mesprit, and Aggron. And this is one of those teams that offensively can work out really well, because you do have Cinderace, you have Conkeldurr, you have Shaymin, and you have Mesprit, which are pretty decent offensive mounts, and you also have Alola Ninetales, which can help them with longevity thanks to the Aurora Wheel. Silvally can be very offensive on a team like this as well, because you do have defensive options in Tapofini and Gastro. Aggron is a pretty decent defensive mount to have, maybe not the best steel type, and looking at it you might want to run Silvally Steel more often than you run Aggron, but having Aggron as another stealth rocker is pretty decent. Gastro and Papafino on the same team I'm not sure about, because even if they have similar weaknesses, it's pretty easy for opposing team now to just run ice coverage and grass coverage, and that will take out a pretty decent chunk of your team. because Appleton doesn't really want to take an ice move. Beartic isn't that bulky, so it might not want to take a grass type move. Pidgeot doesn't really want to take an ice move. Tapu Fini doesn't really want to take a grass move. Gastro can't take a grass move. Shaymin doesn't really want to take an ice move. So you have that problem going on here. So I think you have pretty decent options for grass. Well, for Thunderbolt immunities and resistances. I really like that part of this team. But you have other problems because you have focused a bit too much on that, in my opinion. Looking at defog options, you have Conkeldurr, you have Silvally, you have Pidgeot, you have Tapu Fini. That's pretty decent. You don't have a spinner, which might have been better in the long run, in my opinion. And then I don't really know what you want to achieve with having Tapu Fini and Gastrodon on the same team. That's a very weird combination for me, even if you have one of the best offensive grass types in the game with Shaymin on your team, so you don't really worry about that too much. Cinderace is a very decent Pokemon to have. It's fast, it hits very hard thanks to Libero, which works just as Protein does. But I do think that you could have done a bit better with supporting it, in my opinion, because it's not that bulky, it doesn't really want to take hits, and if you set up the hail, it will take damage every single turn it stays in on that. Having a Beartic with Slash Rush with the hail as well is very useful and could actually be a winning condition for some things. But overall, this is just a team that I'm not a fan of that much, even if it has my favorite Pokemon aggro, and that's the only thing that saves it to be maybe a C-. But I'm pretty sure that this will be a D+ more often than not, because I don't see it work out. I don't see a synergy that works really well together. And that's a bit of a problem. Next up, we have the Munich Miltanks and Lords. And he has Aegislash, Necrozma, Galarian Weezing, Talonflame, Eldegoss, Regigigas, Shedinja, Hydreigon, Zeraora, Quagsire, Crabominable, and Hariyama. I mean, you have some things that works really well together here. You have Aegislash with Necrozma together with Hydreigon that works really well off of each other. You don't really have a good Fairy type, in my opinion, because Galarian Weezing, yeah, sure, it can do some work, but it lacks the longevity, and you don't really have a Wishcaster that can help it out. Eldegoss can be a pretty decent grass type to have. Thanks to its rapid spin, it's more useful, and it does actually support Talonflame very well. Regigigas and Shedinja on this team feels a bit redundant, because they basically do the same things. They want to come in, and in Regigigas' case, wants to stay in and try to boost its attack and then attack, and Shedinja wants to do the same. But most of the time, you will have Mons that will be able to take care of them because of slow start, because of the 1 base HP that Shedinja has. Having Zeraora together with Aegislash might be better in the long run than having Hydreigon with Aegislash, but overall Zeraora, Hydreigon and Aegislash works very well together, and having the Dragon Dance option of Necrozma is really good as well. My biggest concern here is the dual fighting types in Crabominable and Hariyama. I understand that you want an ice type, but there are better ice types in my opinion. I'm pretty sure that Sneasel went undrafted, for example. That would be a better ice type than Crabominable. And then Hariyama is a better fighting type than Crabominable as well, so you have that here. Talonflame is not that good of a fire type in my opinion, because in this generation, like, Talonflame is one of those monsters that it wants to run Choice Banded, Gale Wings, stab moves. But at the same time, in this generation you want it to have heavy duty boots, so you don't have to take any rock damage. And not having a lot of defog options or not a lot of spinning options is actually pretty detrimental for something like Talonflame to work. Because as far as I'm concerned, you only have Eldegoss and Weezing as really good ways to get rid of hazards, because Hydreigon doesn't really want to run defog. Quagsire is an annoying Pokemon to face, and it also gives you a very good ground type in my regards, especially for the time that you are built. Quagsire is one of those mons that if it works on your team, it's a very good Pokemon, but if it doesn't work on your team, it feels a bit out of place, and it might be very hard to actually make it work. Even if it has a very decent abilities, very good abilities and a decent typing, it lacks the stats to really back it up, even if it does have recovery and ways to boost its defenses. But overall, this is a team that I feel will will be somewhere around a C plus B minus. I kind of feel the same way about SV's team as I do about this team. It's very similar in that regard. And if I would have to choose the other Egg Slash and Hydreigon team, I would have done that over this one, because I do feel it has a better fairy type and has better options overall to boost its whole team, while this one is more of, we have a lot of attacking mons that can do a lot of things, let's put them together and see what they can break. But overall this is a very nice team and should be fine for playoffs. It actually depends on how your low tier mons will do, in my opinion, because your high tier mons will do very well, but you need to switch it up a lot, otherwise it will be very predictable which mons will come each week. Then we have the Victoria, Victinis and Zombie, who won Season 4, I'm pretty sure, who has Mew, Superior, Seismitoad, Obstagoon, Lycanroc, Midday, Garter, Roselia, Corviknight, Rotom Heat, Florges, Furfrou, and Snom. And we're gonna ignore the Snom because I don't have anything to talk about. I have no idea what it wants to do except for dying. But the rest of the team is interesting to say the least. Having two Eviolite uses in Roselia and Garter might be detrimental, especially since your only really good knockoff switch-in is the Obstagoon. Maybe Florges as well. And talking about Florges, having the Wish option for this team is really, really big, because that means that Mew doesn't really have to be that defensive to actually have very good longevity. Superior has the same there. You can run a very good subset with Superior and then just have Florges healing it up every single time with Wish. Rotom Heat is also a mon that really benefits from having a Wisher. And this is a very, very, very nice team. And now that I last video jumped over Obstagoon a lot and didn't talk about it, that's because I, one, forgot its abilities, and two, I thought it was Grimmsnarl for some reason. I read Obstagoon but thought Grimmsnarl. And I was close to do the same thing here, but since we talked about it yesterday, I'm going to talk about Obstagoon a bit here. Obstagoon has the potential to be a wall breaker, and it can hit very, very hard, but it do lack that longevity thanks to it being quite weak to fighting. So every mon that has a fighting type move can easily defeat Obstagoon in a 1v1, no matter how hard Obstagoon hits. Especially if it has some bulk behind it. It's very hard for Obstagoon to one-hit KO things and not get one-hit KO'd back. So I do think that Obstagoon can be a very decent mon to have on this team, because it's one of the more offensive mons on the team, together with Lycanroc, together with Mew, together with Superior. My biggest concern here is actually the overall fighting weakness, because Furfrou doesn't really want to take a fighting type move, even if it has a very good physical defense. It doesn't really want to take it. Florges can switch in on it, but it doesn't. But most of those mons that use fighting type moves also have access to steel moves, poison moves, or yeah, I forgot the other word I was going to say. Which means that Florges doesn't really have that good of a time to switch into those things. Rotom Heat doesn't really want to take a fighting type move. Corviknight, once again, it can come in on them, but it doesn't really want to do it because it wants to have more special defense than physical defense, in my opinion. Roselia is not that bulky even with an Eviolite. Lycanroc gets destroyed, Obstagoon gets destroyed. And then you have Seismitoad, Serpent, Mew who can switch in on it if need be, especially Mew, but Seismitoad and Superior doesn't really want to do it either. Grass is another kinda problem for this team, since Seismitoad and Lycanroc doesn't really want to take it, and Guard isn't that especially defensive as well. But you do have good switchings for grass type mons, and you do have maybe the second best offensive grass type in the game in Superior. I do rate Shaymin higher than Superior. Having access to Accelerock is also really nice on Lycanroc, so this is a very nice team overall. And I can see some problems with Volt Beam and grass type coverage as well, because this team, like, it has everything it needs, but it needs to be played correct every single turn to not lose a very important Pokemon each turn. Because if you get predicted zombie, you lose a mon more or less every single time, because you do lack the overall Volt that you need, in my opinion, to make sure that you don't have to worry about reads. But for me, this is a clear playoff team. It should be a B team, absolutely, and it does have the potential to be even higher if Zombie plays it right. Then we have the Toronto Weaviles and Levity, who drafted Tapu Bulu, Suicune, Tyrantrum, Heliolisk, Hitmontop, Gligar, Thievul, Volcarona, Galarian Corsola, Copperajah, Avalugg, and Meowstic. And this is a team that I really like. This team actually has 6 of the monsters that I actually wanted to draft myself in Tapu Bulu, Tyrantrum, Heliolisk, Hitmontop, Gligar, and Thievul. Those were the ones that I actually wanted on my own team. So this is a team that I actually like, and I know their synergy will work very well together. Having Tapu Bulu with Suicune is actually huge, because Suicune can now come in, doesn't really have to worry about not taking, about getting its leftovers knocked off if Tapu Bulu has been in before it. Also having the option from Tyrantrum to just come in grassy terrain and click head smash on things is very scary to think about. Heliolisk is also one that actually can benefit from the grassy terrain, because it doesn't really take that much damage from Life Orb if it stays in. Hitmontop, Gligar, Corsola, and Avalugg. Pretty sure the Corsola gets Rapid Spin at least. Hitmontop, Gligar, Corsola, and Avalugg is very good hazard removals, and it actually supports Volcarona really nice, so you don't really have to rely on heavy duty boots all that often. Meowstic and Avalugg is maybe the ones that I don't really like in this team, but they can work out. Copperajah is also one that might have been better on a different team, but it's a very nice steel type to have, and it does have a pretty hard hitting heavy slam as well, so that's actually really nice to have. Thievul is maybe the biggest steal so far in tier 6, because it does have Stakeout, which means that if you switch this out, you will get a stab knockoff from a base, I think it's base 100, base 90, base 100 stab physical attacking dark type, which is pretty scary to think about. So it can be a very good physical offensive breaker, as well as a specially offensive breaker, and it has a lot of utility thanks to that. Gligar and Hitmontop is always a good combination because of the intimidation, and then going into Gligar to take care of the hits. Corsola is in the same boat, that actually works really well with Hitmontop. And adding Suicune to that defensive core is really nice, especially since you have the grassy terrain. And this is a team that I have no problems with. This could have been a B+. It's not quite enough to be an A-, but it should be B+. And I'm really looking forward to see Levity use this team. It's one of the best teams drafted in this division, or in this conference in my opinion. Next up we have the New England Evolutions, coached by Triple, and he has the Latias, Scizor, Politoed, Donphan, Scrafty, Lapras, Morgrem, Barraskewda, Zapdos, Miltank, Trevenant, and Garbodor. This started out as a rain team and ended up as an hybrid between everything. It has pretty decent rain options, because Scizor really likes to be in rain. You get Barraskewda, Swift Swim, or its other ability that I forgot about what it's called. It allows it to hit pretty hard. Zapdos really likes to be in the rain now, since it has Weather Ball again. And Trevenant, and it's just like this, it wants to stay in rain, so it can actually abuse its grass type ability versus fire types as well. My biggest concern for this team is actually the lack of options to get rid of hazards. You can set up hazards plenty, but you can't really get rid of them. You have Latias and Scizor with Defog, you have Zapdos with Defog, and then you have Donphan with Spin, sure, but Latias doesn't really want to run Defog. Zapdos in this team is more offensive, so you don't really want to be stuck running Defog on it. And Scizor, even if it is defensive, it more of the time doesn't want to run Defog unless you get rid of something like Swords Dance, because it kind of needs Swords Dance to be really good in my opinion. Donphan is your only really viable spinner, or really viable ways to get rid of hazards on this team in my opinion, even if you have Zapdos. But as I said, Zapdos, Latios, and Scizor doesn't really want to have Defog in this generation, because the lack of Mega Evolutions do make them more offensively based in the meta. Trevenant and Garbodor is actually a very nice combination to have, because they work pretty well with each other, and also adding Miltank to that combination is actually a very good defensive core full of floor tier mons. Scrafty is another one that should maybe be higher up as well, which is a pretty big steal, and Morgrem is a worse Grimmsnarl, but should still be very useful to have. I'm a bit sad that Morgrem is your best fairy type and only fairy type on this team. Would maybe I like the better fairy type. but adding the Fairy type and Dark type is actually pretty good for your team overall. This is a C+ team for me, because it actually depends on how it utilizes Rain. If it utilizes Rain on a very good way, this is a B+ team, even the best of cases. If it doesn't really use it, it's more of a C- team, so I've decided to rank it a bit lower, because I don't really know how it will work together as a Rain team, since it's more of a semi-Rain team. It's better than Hacker's semi-Rain team in my opinion, but at the same time it's not that good overall that it can actually be around the same level. I mean, it's something about this team that makes me more hesitant than about Hacker's team, but at the same time they are both very good teams if they make the Rain work. Then, last but not least, for this video at least, we have the Baltimore Blastoise and Dave, who is one of the scariest coaches to face in regular season, and then in playoffs you can just roll over him. He has the Landorus, Therian, Milotic, Escavalier, Snorlax, Comfey, Guzzlord, Exeggutor, Gengar, Kraken, Vikavolt, Delphox, and Glalie. If you take away Exeggutor and Glalie, this is an A+ team in my opinion. It has the bulk, it has the offense, it has the synergy that works really well. You have stick webs on this team, which will make things like Terrakion and Landorus Therian very hard to deal with. You also have a very decent Trick Room option thanks to Escavalier and Snorlax and Vikavolt, which all benefits from a Trick Room. You have very nice ways to work around different weaknesses, and if you just add an Assault Vest to anything on this team, Snorlax will also be able to work very well as an offensive powerhouse even if you don't have Trick Room or stick webs up. Comfey is one of those mons that can always do very well, especially if you pair it up with decent things like Delphox and Escavalier. Vikavolt is one of the best mons in Dractic format this time around because it does get Sticker Web, is a slow U-turner Volt Switcher. Well, it's a slow Volt Switcher, but it does hit so damn hard. And having one of the best checks to Vikavolt in Snorlax on your team actually makes Vikavolt way scarier to deal with for everyone else. I can understand why I want Glalie, because it gets Ice Shard and it has that priority, but it's base 80 across the board. It's maybe not the best Ice type to get because, as I said, I'm pretty sure Sneasel is still there, and it might have been better in the long run to get Sneasel. Exeggutor, I mean, it's a grass, a psychic type. I don't really know what else this does besides dying. But at the same time, both Exeggutor and Glalie won't come every single week. They might see 1 or 2 games, especially Glalie, because of the ice priority. And I understand why you would take it, because thanks to taking away the ice priority from Glalie, you actually make sure that Landorus can actually play way better versus other teams. And if you just have it on a team as a dumpster, so to speak, it actually fits you better to have it on your team because no one else can take it, and that makes Landorus Therian so much better because we don't have hidden powers, so Landorus and Escalier works very, very well this time around, especially with Milotic. And this is an A- team, and it would have been an A+ if Exeggutor and Glalie wasn't here, but I do understand the whole synergy of it, that it can actually work pretty well. Having 2 of the best physical attackers in Terrakion and Landorus, and maybe adding the best special attacker from tier 2 in Gengar works extremely well. And then also being able to pick up a steal in Snorlax in tier 3, because it should be tier 2 in my opinion, actually makes this team very top heavy, because you have mons that should be 1 tier up for everything except for Guzzlord, Exeggutor, Delphox and Glalie. So this is a very good team, very well drafted, and should be one of the contenders for winning this season, in my opinion. And with that, I'm gonna say thank you for watching this video. I will see you next time, which will be my own draft recap. I have no idea when it will be up because I have a lot going on right now. But with that said, thank you once more, and I will see you next time.